No, that title is not a typo. It's really December 2025, and I'm here talking about my top 10 favorite 2024 movies. Better late than never. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into the first ever Disc Junkie movie list with number 10, The Outrun. Directed by Nora Fingscheidt, co-produced by BBC Film, and distributed by Studio Canal, this is based on the 2016 memoir of the same name written by Amy Liptrot. The Outrun follows Rona, who returns home to the Orkney Islands in Scotland, where she lives alone and finds work as a biologist after completing a rehab assignment for alcoholism. Upon first viewing, I wasn't sure this would make my cut, but as time passed, I found my thoughts wandering back to this movie over and over. So I can't deny it left an impression on me, and here it is. The film is primarily a cautionary tale of alcohol abuse, but without being preachy. The plot is pretty slice of life, so I want to hone in on the portrayal of addiction, which is authentic and very negative. With two exceptions, one of which we'll get to later, I watched every movie on this list multiple times. I did not watch The Outrun multiple times because it is not fun. Honestly, Rona, the main protagonist, is kind of pathetic. She keeps drinking and getting pissed drunk night after night, even though the consequences are blindingly clear, and this puts overbearing strain on all of her familial and interpersonal relationships. One plot point I found interesting is it's never precisely addressed why Rona turns to alcohol so frequently. There's hints at trauma, but we never see a straight-up conversation between her and a loved one trying to dissect the exact cause. I find this to be very profound because addressing the root cause of her addiction seems like an obvious solution, but of course in reality, addiction is an extremely complicated and sensitive subject that we in 2025 still are no closer to fixing. Ultimately, this film captures the struggles of alcoholism and mental health issues with immense compassion. Actress Saoirse Ronan gives an exceptional performance in a dramatic role. Rona may be pathetic, but you feel genuine sorrow and pity for her, and Saoirse wonderfully conveys that complex anguish. Filmed in Orkney, The Outrun makes great use of breathtaking, desolate, and humbling natural backgrounds to contrast Rona's struggles with partying in London. You could view this story through the lens of healing through nature, but personally, I interpret Rona's journey as being more introspective. If you want to watch a deeply personal journey of self-awareness and self-love, then check out The Outrun. Moving on to number 9, I've got It's What's Inside, directed by Greg Jardin, produced by Such Content, and distributed by Netflix. This is an interesting one. I'd say it's primarily a dark comedy, sort of, with mystery, thriller, and even horror aspects. The tone is lighthearted most of the time, bordering on goofy. There's a preposterous energy to the scenarios our characters find themselves in, but in a good way. The premise is a bunch of friends from college reconnect for a pre-wedding party. Everyone's getting high and drunk, but things go off the rails when their eccentric friend, Forbes, who they haven't seen in years and who's essentially been cast out, unexpectedly responds to the invitation and shows up unannounced. And he's got with him an experimental, top-secret project that he breaks out as a party game. I went into this film not knowing what to expect. Netflix films sometimes have a corny way of trying too hard to appeal to modern young audiences, but overall, I was pleasantly impressed. The story is not the most emotional, but it is fun and engaging with a lot to keep track of. The twist with the game is simple yet surreal and eerily believable. It's a fantastic hook. While the IP is original, the concept has been explored before for sure, but I think the pairing with horror movie tropes in that you see a cast of characters navigate a strange situation, and it's also a party so everyone's hot, under the influence, and horny, and that just adds fuel to the flame. It's extremely well executed. There's many surprises that keep you guessing and keep things feeling fresh. The actors do a great job selling the plausibility. It's fun watching them process the whole thing through different stages, from immediate shock and disgust to morbid curiosity and eventually just full-on sinful revelry. I definitely find myself wondering where I'd land in the range of reactions. The editing and aesthetic flair of this movie is trippy and eye-catching. It's also admittedly completely unrealistic. You'll have characters outside at night talking on the sidewalk, yet bright neon green and purple lights are shining in their faces. At the same time, there's a crucial storytelling mechanism through the second half of the film that relies completely on lighting and stage design to clue you in into what's truly going on. I don't know, I found it like visual candy. This is a very entertaining film that's a bit heady, weird, and very creatively executed. I highly recommend it as a group watch. At number 8 is Thelma, directed by Josh Margolin, produced by Bandwagon, and distributed in the US by Magnolia Pictures. An action-adventure comedy about our 93-year-old titular protagonist Thelma, who gets tricked by a phone scammer and loses $10,000 in the process. Disappointed in herself, she sets out against the odds to take back what is rightfully hers. Another great group watch. This is a delightful, laugh-out-loud, touching movie that hopefully anyone can relate to if you have grandparents or have interacted with elders through work or volunteering. I personally lived with my grandma for a couple of years. Bless her soul, she's still rocking, and she nearly fell prey to a very similar predatory type scam a few years ago, so this movie definitely hit close to home. But even without that context, just the concept of growing old is one of the basest existential dreads. It's painful to slowly lose your own resilience and dependability, become a burden to the people you love, outlive your friends, and Thelma genuinely explores these themes beautifully. Since this is a comedy, there are plenty of jokes and gags about old age, but they're done with great taste and love. Also, I guess director Josh Margolin loves Mission Impossible because a lot of the action is heavily inspired by it, from music to framing to sequencing, but instead of breaking into a high security vault while suspended from a cable wire, it's your very old grandma's low stakes equivalent. So she's walking a few blocks to the post office, or she's navigating a flight of stairs, or racing on a scooter. It's a little absurd, but it's believably grounded and well done and absolutely hilarious. There's heavy conversations the film doesn't shy away from. At its core, this movie is a heartwarming message to love and empower your elders while respecting their struggles. From the perspective of someone growing old, this movie implores you to recognize your shortcomings, learn to ask for help, and always lend a helping hand. June Squibb as Thelma freaking delivers. Somehow, at the ripe age of 93 during the movie's filming, she stepped into her very first lead actress role, and she plays the part of stubborn, lovable grandma perfectly. Actor Richard Roundtree as Ben, Thelma's friend and voice of reason, is also great, and the two share a wonderful dynamic. Thelma also has a strong relationship with her grandson, portrayed by Fred Hetchinger, and both navigate their shared familial struggles from different perspectives in endearing ways. It's corny to say, but this movie will have you laughing or crying from start to finish. It's an absolute blast. Rest in peace, Richard Roundtree. At number 7, it's Inside Out 2, directed by Kelsey Mann, produced by Pixar and distributed by Disney. The sequel to 2015's Inside Out, a film that personifies the basic emotions inside the mind of young protagonist Riley. They compete and collaborate to influence her actions and her sense of identity. Man, when Pixar films hit, they really hit. Like all of Pixar's classics, this is a fantastical adventure with loads of comedy, but I love how in the second half of Pixar's catalog, these newer entries that deal with timeless, even existential themes through the lens of a children's movie. These are stories that can resonate with young and adult audiences. There's some cartoon logic and dramatization, of course, but the entire interpretation of how our minds and thinking works is so fun. Our emotions are key decision makers, but they're also like administrative maintenance workers just looking out for our well-being. Ultimately, I love how Inside Out portrays the necessary role of the full spectrum of emotions in our lives. There's good and bad to it all, and that's normal. Inside Out 2 is another coming-of-age story as Riley enters her teenage years and begins contending with a new gang of emotions: envy, embarrassment, ennui or boredom, and the biggest new player, anxiety. I love the wrinkle of Riley growing up and not only dealing with like the relatable small town problems of puberty, starting high school and trying to fit in, but also experiencing her emotions evolving over time. The portrayal of anxiety is really interesting, representing the more complex and sometimes overwhelming feelings we feel as we enter adolescence. I'm sure a lot of viewers resonate with it, and it's an interesting foil for the character Joy and her emphasis that as we get older, we can't let the childlike joy inside of us die. I found the ending to be extremely satisfying and deserved, and overall this film boasts great writing. Of course, since it's Pixar, the animation is very pleasing, lots of bright and dynamic colors, many different styles, and wondrous landscapes. The animation itself is also a great prop for jokes, and speaking of which, the comedy is stellar. Some great brain-related puns that can only be expressed via animation. So yeah, great film and great sequel too, giving us more of that awesome concept in the original, but adding new layers of nuance. I'm not sure it's possible considering there's already so many cooks in the kitchen in terms of emotional facets, but I'd happily welcome a third entry in this series. At number 6, I have I Saw the TV Glow, directed by Jane Schoenbrunn, co-produced by Fruit Tree, and released by A24. Not my number one movie of the year, but actually my most watched 2024 film. I just happened to show it to a few different people, but also this is definitely deserving of multiple watches to digest everything. I saw the TV Glow is psychological, surreal, and dreamlike. Things start innocently enough as Justice Smith and Jack Haven play two high schoolers who bond over a late-night young adult television show, The Pink Opaque. The film is set in 1996, and the emphasis on late-night TV definitely earns nostalgia points from audiences my age. You know, kids who stayed up late against their parents' wishes to watch weird cable television. For me, that was Adult Swim and occasionally Goosebumps, although the vaguely horror, vaguely supernatural Twin Peaks is also a great comparison. On my first watch, the film felt like an intentionally very awkward, cheesy sort of generic teenage relationship coming-of-age story, but when The Pink Opaque gets canceled, well, let's say the story rapidly develops and changes from there. The film is labeled as horror, although I think the genre and overall plot are very up to interpretation. There are certainly scary moments and ideas expressed in very jarring imagery thrust upon the viewer, but to me it came across almost like a thriller or a very anxious, stress-inducing film. Without giving too much away, the themes explored may resonate more with some viewers than others, but like I said, there's a lot to chew on regardless. I think where much of the horror comes from is in the uncertainty. Is what we're seeing on screen real? Are the characters' experiences real? Are their internal struggles real? How do you embrace the things you feel inside, or is that even a good idea? There's also existential horror in the idea of wasting your sad life even though the path to turn things around is right in front of you. What the film does exceptionally well is leave itself open to many interpretations. Some viewers might find the unconventional delivery patience testing, and that's fine. I think as long as you go into this with an open mind and try not to take every detail too literally, then you'll walk away feeling something and with a lot to think about. Moving on from the film's content to stylistic choices, the way the movie is shot is very tasteful and unique. Like It's What's Inside, this film's color palette is all over the place but beautifully done. There's many instances where the camera will focus on a single person's face and it's illuminated in colors that are definitely unnatural given the setting. It's sort of subtle, but it's definitely enough to make you tilt your head and wonder what exactly is going on. The soundtrack is also fantastic. The original score is composed by none other than Alex G, but there's also additional tracks featuring an ensemble of contemporary indie artists. You can look up the track list if you want, but I thought it was great going in blind and recognizing artists I love over and over. This is a weird movie, and if that's all it takes to pique your interest, then I definitely think you should give I Saw the TV Glow a try. For my number 5, I've got Civil War, directed by Alex Garland, produced by DNA Films, and again distributed in the US by A24. As the title suggests, the gist is there's a civil war in America in 2024. I don't know how accurate of a depiction this alternate history scenario really is. I mean, who does? But there's for sure a lot to unpack. I can't really say more without light contextual spoilers, so if you want to watch this film completely unspoiled, then use the timestamp to skip ahead. You have been spoiler warned. So with that out of the way, I'll address the fact that many viewers, myself included, went into this expecting some kind of political statement. In reality, the movie is largely apolitical. It doesn't take any stance on the spectrum really at all. The marketing may be toyed with our expectations, but regardless, I enjoy this for what it is. The lack of partisan commentary comes from the fact that the main characters are journalists. We don't so much as poke their ideologies with a 10-foot pole, but they travel through America in the midst of war to document anything and everything. In a sense, they have no political motive at all. They instead want to capture the raw, unfiltered imagery of war and leave politics to the reader. They certainly find themselves in many life-threatening situations, confronted by plenty of bloodthirsty citizens reveling in the chaos. Civil War might not be as political as you thought, but it's definitely as stressful and brutal and unforgiving as you'd expect. This movie does a great job of capturing what a lot of people, not only in America, but across the world, feel when consuming news in this modern era. The main character, played by Kirsten Dunst, is a photojournalist, and she photographs protests, police clashes, and even gruesome death, all in a stoic, nearly inhumane fashion. These horrors definitely wear her down, but ultimately she acts like she's just clocking in and out of her job. Everything is a photo op, no matter how grisly. She and her colleagues are nearly desensitized due to sheer volume of depravity that assaults their senses every day. The movie also signals the pitfall of being neutral to a fault. These photographers are literally on the front lines, but they don't actively participate in anything. Of course, objectivity is important in journalism, but the journalists throughout this movie basically all lose touch with reality and danger. The mood in many scenes is eerily upbeat and carefree, but when you fool yourself into thinking all of the bad things happening around you aren't your problem because they don't affect you personally, well, you're in for a rude awakening. Civil War gives you a lot to think about without being overbearing. It doesn't give you all the answers, and how could it? And it gets extra points from my monkey brain because it is a war flick after all. There's a couple shootouts sprinkled throughout the runtime, but the whole thing ends with a massive, loud, action-packed, immersive, and visceral closing sequence. I don't think the movie's perfect for as violent as it is. I do think one scene in particular is a bit gratuitous. Ironically, it's the scene that gets the closest to making any true political statement, but I don't know, the portrayal seems like cruelty for the sake of cruelty. Also, the ending includes a bit of a confusing last-second change of heart for one of our main characters that I don't really love. Still though, I strongly recommend giving this a watch. Also, Kaylee Spaney gives an outstanding performance. Breaking into the top 4 is The Order, directed by Justin Kurzel, co-produced by AGC Studios, and distributed in the US by Vertical. The Order is based on the 1989 nonfiction book The Silent Brotherhood, which tells the story of the 1980s white supremacist neo-Nazi terrorist group called The Order, which operated in Washington state. Remember earlier when I mentioned The Outrun and one other film on this list were single watches for me? Yeah, this is the other culprit. I stumbled upon this because I just wanted to please my itch for a loud action shootout thriller, which this is sort of that, but it's even more than I signed up for, and also a really rough watch. Not just because of the violence, which is certainly harsh, but also what makes it worse, I guess for unavoidable reasons, is it's based on real life. There's so many scenes and characters where blatant racism and disregard for humanity are sickeningly normalized. I won't tell all, but this cell, which split off from the Aryan nations, commits several armed robberies among other violent crimes. Then they just get to go home and wash their hands and hug their families and get together for some good old-fashioned backyard barbecues. It's quite unsettling and unfair. The immorality of it all makes it easy to root for our main protagonist, an FBI agent marvelously portrayed by Jude Law. He delivers brilliantly, selling the immense pressure of his position, playing life and death hide and seek, and he pushes himself and even those around him to the edge in the name of saving lives. He has a truly psycho interrogation scene in particular where I wasn't sure if I should cheer or grimace. Ty Sheridan does a great job playing the role of the wide-eyed local deputy that won't stand idly by while his hometown is slowly corrupted. The two characters together share great chemistry, and you really want them to succeed in the face of evil. Speaking of which, Nicholas Hoult gives an excellent performance as Bob Matthews, the leader of the Order. He's so chillingly good, in fact, that I hesitate to give praise since his real-life muse is such a vile monster. The action sequences are crisp and loud, which is what I was looking for. From car chases to gunfights, everything's more finely crafted than overstimulating, but the feeling throughout remains tense as hell. Fans of heist films and police dramas should take note. Ironically, like The Outrun, this film also makes great use of panoramic landscapes, this time in the Pacific Northwest. Again, nature is being used as an escape from an unforgiving reality. The soundtrack is outstanding too. Jed Kurzel, older brother of the director Justin, gives an ominous score perfectly fitting the film's downtrodden tone. Some passages are even like neoclassical darkwave. It's really oppressive. Historical crime thrillers are definitely an awesome genre, but man, they are draining. The pacing of this film is razor sharp, which is a double-edged sword since you barely have time to slow down and process the gravity of these events. Which, again, some of this is dramatized, but a lot of it really happened. If you want an intense history lesson, then definitely watch this. Be warned though, it is not for the squeamish. Knowledge is power, but ignorance is bliss. The Bronze Trophy of 2024 goes to Twilight of the Warriors Walled In, directed by Soy Chang, co-produced by Entertaining Power, and distributed by Media Asia. As a kid that grew up on old school Jet Li and Jackie Chan, this is everything I want out of a modern cheesy martial arts film, plus even a little more. The story is set in 1980s Hong Kong in the Kowloon walled city, which again, another movie with a history lesson, although this one is thankfully a little less depraved than the last. I had never even heard of Kowloon before. That itself gets bonus points because I learned quite a lot. If you're not familiar, Kowloon was an extremely over-densely populated city within British Hong Kong without any formal government, so it was a land of the lawless, a sanctuary, and a cesspool. Just the concept of this being a real place is a lot to wrap my head around, and making it the random backdrop for this kung fu drama was fascinating and genius. It's clear the filmmakers were inspired by not only 80s Hong Kong cinema, but also by its history. The elaborate production and detailed recreation of Kowloon really elevate the whole experience, and you can even say it's the star of the show. Sure, there's a bit of CG, but the practical set design is masterful. The visual storytelling is so well organized and colorful, despite the environment being so claustrophobic. And just seeing how these people make do, persevere, and even come together in this dank, concrete labyrinth is crazy, but also uplifting. Even if this is a film interpretation, it's disorienting to think people actually lived in such putrid conditions. But enough history, what about the plot? It's actually quite a crime thriller. It has some welcome cliches: long-standing gang warfare, faded familial bonds, visions of vengeance, and loyalties being tested. There's heartwarming moments, tragedy, and of course a bit of comedy. There's a lot of different characters to root for and against. I mean, how can you not love a martial arts movie with people named Cyclone, 12th Master, and Mr. Big? And of course it can't be a classic HK flick without Sammo Hung. The plot is unpredictable and compelling enough to valiantly serve its purpose as a vessel for the main course, which is obviously the action. And pun intended, it's kick-ass. The plentiful fight scenes are expertly integrated into the unique setting, with walls being smashed, furniture and dust flying everywhere, fisticuffs in cramped spaces, and even a random piece of sheet metal being reshaped mid-fight into a knife. Is the choreography maybe more imaginative than realistic? And do the fights gradually get more and more absurd, leading to a fantastical, superhero-esque finale? Sure, but I don't care, man. Give me those dramatic fighting stance poses and I'll cheer every time. I'm willing to accept a bit of ridiculous physics for the sake of great, crowd-pleasing fun. Maybe it's landing high on my list due to nostalgia factors, but this is my list, and I say this is a movie worth your time. It's a glorious instant Hong Kong kung fu classic that honors traditions but delves into new territory with its creativity. Something that's hard to do in this genre. Nearing the end, my second favorite movie of 2024 is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, directed by George Miller. It's produced by his own company Kennedy Miller Mitchell, with worldwide distribution through Warner Bros. The fifth entry in the Mad Max franchise, also created by George Miller along with Byron Kennedy. This is actually the first film in the franchise that doesn't feature the character Mad Max, so it's a sort of spin-off. Furiosa is a prequel to 2015's Mad Max Fury Road, a film that many fans hold in extremely high regard. In that movie, Max encounters the character Furiosa, portrayed by Charlize Theron. This film tells her origin story, with Alila Brown portraying her as a child and Anya Taylor-Joy portraying her as a young adult. There are movies lower on this list with more emotional weight, but Furiosa is just so freaking epic. The Mad Max films take place in a very stylized, steampunk, post-apocalyptic setting where the barren desert covers almost everything in sight, and remaining civilization has been crammed into a select few settlements. The scarcity of resources has turned the world lawless, and people routinely steal and kill to survive. They'll pluck ammo and weapons from fallen allies, and take off with gas tanks, tires, and even steering wheels. The setting is grotesque, but something about the presentation and sometimes goofy way characters conduct themselves creates a sort of dark comedy tone. If you can get past the brutality of it all, this is really such a fun action-adventure flick. To travel, people rely on all types of crazy, whacked-out cars, motorcycles, and trucks. This results in spectacular, massive action set pieces that take car chases into a whole nother stratosphere. Visually, the movie is fantastic. Even though the entirety takes place in dry, lifeless wastelands, the cinematography is vibrant. Wide, sweeping shots highlight how expansive and isolating the environment is. Meanwhile, clever use of day and night lighting varies the color palette. Characters and costumes are eye-catchingly over the top and ridiculous. If you want a loud, big-budget theater experience while devouring popcorn and grinning from ear to ear, this is basically as good as it gets. The Mad Max universe excels at immersive and fun world building. Society has devolved back into essentially tribes led by chieftains. They have their own customs, hierarchies, infighting, and attempts to preserve pre-apocalypse history. It makes sense, but there's almost a childlike goofiness in how it's implemented. For example, you have Gas Town, a town that exists solely to create and trade gas and is surrounded by a moat of crude oil. Also have Bullet Farm, which, you guessed it, produces bullets and other munitions. It's like the convoluted, nonsensical stories you imagine as a kid playing with action figures. There's a wider political conflict at play with these factions bartering and warring against each other for resources, and it all just adds more flavor to this hysterical dystopia. The movie is not just explosive action scene after scene. Rather, it really expands our knowledge of the Mad Max universe by learning each character and party's motivation. Plus, that buildup really makes the grand, jaw-dropping battles feel earned. I mean, the sequence at the midway point where Furiosa and company defend a supply tanker from a land and air assault, that was fucking awesome. I knew after that scene that this movie would land high on my list. The story is surprisingly personal through the lens of our main protagonist, especially compared to Fury Road, which was mainly 2 hours of nonstop action. Furiosa endures a lot of hardship, abuse, and loss, and it emphasizes the cruelty of the Mad Max world and the sheer determination needed to persevere. Despite very minimal dialogue, Anya Taylor-Joy delivers a great performance. Her eyes and physical acting do the talking. You also have Chris Hemsworth playing the main villain Dementus. He is truly diabolical and unhinged, bordering on hilariously absurd. This was a great time at the movies, despite reviewing very well among critics and fans though. Furiosa unfortunately performed poorly at the box office. I'm not qualified to analyze why, and plenty of articles have already been published delving into the details, but I personally implore you to watch this movie if you have a chance. And my favorite movie of 2024 is Look Back. Directed by Kiyotaka Oshiyami, produced by Studio Durian, and distributed by Avex Pictures. You could call this a short film as it clocks in at just 1 hour, but do not be fooled. This movie packs a huge punch. An anime coming-of-age drama that depicts the one-shot manga by Tatsuki Fujimoto, who you may know as the writer and illustrator of Chainsaw Man. The story follows Fujino and Kiyomoto, two young schoolgirls who bond over their passion for drawing and eventually collaborate to publish manga together. This is a beautiful, emotional, masterful film about two of the most touching things that you can love in life: art and people. Visually, the movie is stunning. Outside of a handful of scenes, there's actually not much intense animation happening, although the presentation is clever. Kiyomoto and Fujino are obsessed with drawing, so there's sections where you're seeing the passage of time as dozens of shots fly by of them hunched over their desks in their room, working from sunup to sundown. Seasons changing as they fill mountains of sketchbooks. The shot selection is simple but gorgeous, and it's elevated by breathtaking, elegant classical music by Haruka Nakamura that makes plain moments feel full of emotion. I'll admit I'm a huge sucker for classical piano, so the soundtrack wins huge points for me. As much as this movie is a love letter to artists and the impact they have, it's also about what motivates individuals to pour their souls into their art. And oftentimes that's the people in our lives. Fujino starts by making comics for the school newspaper, and she receives ample praise from teachers and classmates alike for her seemingly advanced skills. But when she sees Kiyomoto's first attempt at a comic, she immediately feels completely outclassed. She throws herself into her work in an effort to compete, but as she increasingly diverts away time from studying and socializing to compulsively practice her craft, she's faced with questions like, aren't you too old for this? Will you really keep doing this when you finish school? Questions that all artists have been berated with in no small amount. Eventually, Fujino loses her motivation to draw completely. Surprisingly though, when the two meet for the first time, Kiyomoto herself turns out to be a huge fan of Fujino's work. Her pure childlike adoration that had been building for years, all entirely unknown to Fujino, rekindles her passion. From then on, the two start a wonderful friendship, and like any great artistic collaboration, they push each other to improve and chase their dreams together. Not only their art, it's their personalities and connection that change each other forever. Like with any deep relationship though, things are not always straightforward. I certainly do not want to spoil things, but I'll say that fans of Chainsaw Man should already know to prepare for the full range of human emotions, good and bad. In a way, this is like a slice of life movie, but turned up to 11. Even though this only runs for 58 minutes, it's not rushed at all. A huge array of complex feelings like jealousy, ambition, friendship, joy, codependency, guilt, and trauma are conveyed in such a delicate and universally relatable way. The ultimate question the film asks is, even in the face of immense pain, why do you create art? It's a question only you can answer. This is an incredible film. Please watch it. It has my endorsement as the best movie of 2024. And that's a wrap. The first Disc Junkie movie list almost an entire year late, but it's done nonetheless. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching and listening. Let me know your thoughts, please, in the comments. Tell me what I got right or wrong. Let me know if you have any film recs I should know about. And please subscribe if you want more music or video game or movie-related commentary. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.